The first visit weekend of this transfer portal cycle, it's now upon us. Who's going to be on campus this weekend? Who were some more names Tennessee is in on? That and a whole lot more. Transfer portal notes, recruiting notes, all that here on a Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, and I'm your host, Eric Kane. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Appreciate you guys making Locked On Vols your first listen and being here with us today. So, going to get into a lot. Obviously, a big recruiting disappointment happened on Thursday morning. We'll recap that. Where do the Vols stand? If not Jordan Seaton on the offensive line, that's coming up in segment 2. Tennessee players making all SEC teams and some Tennessee players that should have been on those all-SEC teams. That's coming up in segment 3. But first, a couple of new names here in the transfer portal cycle. Real quick, let me give a quick shout-out to Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. So, again, the transfer portal officially opened on Monday morning, and so Tennessee's been making some names and making some headway. Some new names have come about. A couple of offers have been handed out. Some more guys could potentially get offered this weekend. It changes by the minutes, and what I say right now at the time of this recording could change in an hour. You guys know how that is, but I wanted to put that disclaimer out there. But now teams are being able to host players from the transfer portal for the first time this weekend. So who are some of those names that are going to be on campus for the University of Tennessee? Well, one of those is going to be a tight end by the name of Holden Staes. He's from Notre Dame. He's a name that I've mentioned a couple of different times this week. He's going to be on campus this week from Notre Dame, and he's a guy that has put up some numbers, not a whole lot. He just came through his sophomore season. He would have 2 years of eligibility remaining. This past year in 2023, he played in 11 games. He started 8 games. He had 15 receptions for 176 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's being kind of the stat breakdown of Holden Staes of Notre Dame. Some of the highlights against Tennessee State on September the 2nd, I would imagine that's week 1. Grabbed his first pass of the season for his first career touchdown. Caught it in the flat, ran 4 yards for the score. At NC State the next week, I guess that's week 2, went for a career best 115 receiving yards on only 4 catches. Career high 40-yard touchdown reception in the third quarter. Scored on the final Irish touchdown of the day, a 35-yard pass from Sam Hartman. So he had a really big day against NC State in week 2. Against Central Michigan, he caught 1 touchdown pass against Ohio State. He didn't really do much against Duke. He didn't really do much against Louisville. He had 2 passes for 16 yards, 2 catches for 16 yards. Against USC, caught 2 passes, 10 yards. Against Pittsburgh, 2 passes, 14 yards. Against Clemson, 1 pass, 7 yards. Against Wake Forest, 2 passes for 6 yards. So really, he started the season off, hot. And I mentioned a couple of those. He had a 2-touchdown day against NC State, had a touchdown against Tennessee State, and and then against Central Michigan. So didn't score a whole lot of touchdowns the rest of the way, but again, the numbers kind of reflect the way Tennessee uses tight ends, at least through the air. He's 6'4" frame, 242 pounds. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, and he's expected to be in town this weekend, as far as I know, for his visit with Tennessee. And again, Tennessee is prioritizing the tight end position. Here's a new name that has come about here on late Thursday and Friday. From the FCS level, tight end from, let's see here, Louisiana, or Southeastern Louisiana, at the FCS level. His name is, my goodness gracious, where does his name go? His name is Bauer Sharp. And Tennessee went to the FCA ranks to get a tight end last year, obviously, in McAllen Castles. That worked out pretty well. Bauer Sharp is 6'5", 245 pounds. He just completed his redshirt sophomore season, so looks like he'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. Pro Football Focus really, really likes Bauer Sharp. So he was a converted tight end, came to college as a quarterback, made the switch to tight end One spring, I believe it was the spring of 2022, competed at tight end in 2022. Obviously, this past season of 2023, now looking to move up. He's got the good frame. Again, that's kind of an NFL body here. Converted tight end. He was the third highest Pro Football Focus graded tight end at the FCS level this year. So, again, a guy that's looking to move up and make some headways, and that is Bauer Sharp of Southeastern Louisiana, a new name, and believe the plan is at this time that he's going to be on campus, not this weekend, but next weekend. That is the plan right now, and Utah is also another school to look out for in that one. The other one, and again, you check the War Room. Time of this recording will come out later in the night as we continue to compile some notes. But while you're watching and listening to this on Friday, the War Room will already be out there at VolQuest.com if you're a member. You can go ahead and double-check that to see if there's going to be any more visitors. But I do believe another visitor that's going to be Juice Wells of South Carolina. It's a name that you guys know. It's a name that I know. It's a name that all SEC fans know. Didn't have a huge impact for South Carolina this year. Was dealing with a foot injury. Was it turf toe? I believe Shane Beamer came out and said that he had a screw in his foot at one point in time, but played the first 3 games and really didn't play at all the rest of the way, I don't believe. He only had 3 receptions, 37 yards, and a touchdown this season in 2023, but he's a guy that's done a whole lot throughout his career. In 2022, he had 60 receptions, 928 yards, 6 touchdowns. In 2021, when he was at James Madison, had 83 receptions, 1,250 yards, and 15 touchdowns. I remember when he came over in the transfer portal cycle prior to the 2022 season. I believe he led all FCS wide receivers and touchdowns, obviously with 15, goodness gracious. But he's a guy looking to move somewhere else, 6'1", 200 pounds. And if you remember back, let me see if I can find it here. And this is going to be tough. I believe in 2022, he had a game against Tennessee. Oh, yeah, here it is. Against Tennessee in 2022, 11 receptions, 177 yards. Goodness gracious. Let's see if he did anything against Tennessee in oh, no, he didn't, because that's when he was at James Madison. And he didn't play against Tennessee this past year. But he torched Tennessee back in 2021, and we all remember that. That was not a good game at South Carolina in the month of November. But sounds like Juice Wells is going to be on campus for a visit as well. And we'll see what happens there. I know Austin Price put out at VolQuest a couple days ago, kind of pumped the brakes a little bit. I think it was on the VolQuest podcast. As is the case with everything we're dealing with right now, guys. I mean, there's going to be an asking price, and you kind of have to weigh the pros and the cons. Is it worth it for a one-year player? Is it worth it for a position? I mean, these are the questions you got to ask yourself now. So it just kind of is what it is. But a really, really good player. Certainly would be a starter in this offense. He'll be on campus, and Tennessee can at least make their pitch and kind of meet and see kind of where each party is. And if there's some common ground, maybe you can work something out. But, we will see. So those are the 2 visitors that I know of right now. There was a third visitor that was scheduled to be on campus. That was Justin Joly of UConn. We spoke about him on this podcast a couple days ago, the tight end. Sounds like Tennessee's narrowed their search at tight end on Holden Staes and now Bauer Sharp. And so, Justin Joly is not anticipating being on campus again this weekend, or to be on campus this weekend. He had previously stated he would be. He went out and tweeted that he would not be on campus this weekend. So it looks like Tennessee is moving on from Justin Joly. Listen, there's names entering the transfer portal by the minute, and there's going to be rumors out there. And I even think I've seen a couple reports out there. A lot of you guys are wondering about Walter Nolan. At least at this time, I haven't heard much about it in terms of Tennessee chatter. I know you might read some places that there could be some, or, the dad says this, or, Walter says this or whatever. At this time, there's not a whole lot of steam there. Again, though, 5 minutes from now, that can change. By the time you listen to this podcast, that can change. Walter Nolan, a guy that was the number 1 overall prospect in the country in the 2022 cycle, or 2023 cycle, 2022 cycle, that's a couple cycles ago. And he won a state championship, played his senior year here locally, nearby Powell High School. So Tennessee fans are very familiar with who he is, and especially, fans in this area. And was a really, really good high school player, went to college. He's slimmed down. He looks like a really, a good, defensive lineman in Southeastern Conference play. He got hurt in the Tennessee game at Tennessee, when A&M came up here back in October, but he was okay, ended up being okay. But Anyway, very familiar with Walter Nolan at this time. I don't think there's much steam there, but again, that can always change. And there will be new names. Tennessee will jump in on new names throughout this transfer portal cycle. That's just kind of how it goes. So Tennessee will host a pair of prospects in for the transfer portal cycle window weekend this weekend, and we'll see what happens. Tennessee is obviously making it a priority, an absolute priority for tight end, and that's where the search is kind of started. Holden Staes from Notre Dame is going to be in this weekend, and then Bauer Sharp is potentially going to be in next weekend, and we'll kind of see where that goes along with Juice Wells. All right, when we come back, no Jordan Seaton. What's that mean for the University of Tennessee? I'll tell you here in a moment, but first I want to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than your 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll on in. With basketball season here as well, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from the different sports leagues. For an example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce for 10.5 combo with 3-pointers made and receptions. It kind of seems like at least Travis Kelce is going to get, over 5 receptions. Can LeBron knock down a couple of threes? That's what an example kind of looks like right there. Plus, for your first deposit match, if you put in the promo code LockedOnCollege at PrizePicks.com, you're going to get matched up to $100. If I put in 50, PrizePicks is going to match me 50. If I put in 75, they're going to match me 75. That's on your first deposits up to $100 by putting in the promo code LockedOnCollege at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. An instant deposit match up to $100. So I tell you guys all the time that literally the transfer portal and recruiting can change by the minute. So at the time of this recording, Friday morning it's available, Thursday afternoon, evening I record. At the time of this recording, I have breaking news. One of those players that I just talked about in segment 1, Juice Wells, not coming to campus. Again, I said I thought it was a long shot. I really did. Obviously, you're going to do your due diligence. He's a really good player. Tennessee would be really, really interested in him. At this time, I always thought it was kind of a long shot, but I did think he was still coming to campus. But in the middle of recording this episode, I was told that he is not coming to campus. So just a classic example right then and there of how things can change. So your visitors for this weekend, before we welcome on our guest, is going to be Holden Staes, the tight end, of course, from Notre Dame, and it's going to be Jaron Sensabaugh, cornerback from the mid-state, from the prep level. So we'll get into some of that, but to do that, I do want to bring on my buddy, my colleague from evolquest.com. His name is Matt Ray. Matt, it's been a fun week, right, to cover recruiting. Have you caught your breath?
It's been a week. It's been a week.
It has been a week indeed, and this recruiting segment is going to be brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, and go check them out at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege if you need to post a job for free. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Where do we start, Matt? Let's start with Jordan Seaton. Of course, that's the big news here late in the week. It was the kid put 7 schools in his finalist graphic a couple of weeks ago, but coming down to it, really felt Ohio State, Tennessee, Oregon. Now, UNAP, all of us at VolQuest, at Oregon, at Ohio State, everybody was pretty much like, don't know where he's going to go. Nothing would surprise us in this recruitment, but we all kind of thought it was those 3 schools. Why is he going to LA? Oh, yeah, well, he's going to go on Undisputed and make his announcement. That makes sense now. And he chooses Colorado.
Yeah, it all makes sense now in terms of the LA piece and everything like that. I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night a couple of times briefly, and obviously he's not given much away at that point. He was kind of surrounded by his family and his management team. Yeah, that's the world that we live in now. We've got 17, 18-year-old kids with management teams. But for Jordan Seaton, I think everybody's like, why California? Now it certainly makes sense as to why California, so he could go on the set of Undisputed and announce. And this isn't really the first time that we've seen Colorado do this, right? Cam Michael a couple of weeks ago, I caught some flack over on the general's quarters because I continue to hear, he's got the Bulldog flu. He's got the Bulldog flu. when I think a lot of people, when he didn't make it to Tennessee, when he had the flu, I think a lot of people overlooked that visit that was wedged there in the middle, which was Colorado. He actually had the Buffalo flu, if you really want to get down to it. And I think at that point in time, I think that's kind of been a trend, right, for Deion Sanders in the way that he's recruited, dating all the way back to Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter quietly made an official visit to Jackson State. Nobody thought anything about it. And then all of a sudden on signing day, the buzz in the recruiting world was Travis Hunter's really going to flip from Florida State to Jackson State. He did it. Here with Jordan Seaton, obviously he visited Colorado earlier in the spring or earlier in the fall. I don't think anybody had thought much about it. Same thing with Cam Michael. That visit had gotten overlooked. And really, Deion didn't use Tennessee in that process in terms of the way that things played out with Cam Michael. He used Georgia, in my opinion, because they were in it. They were the leader. They were the home state school, top-ranked team in the country at the time. And Cam Michael hadn't visited them all fall. And then suddenly on November 4th, he shows up in Athens. Where does all the buzz immediately go to? Because you can't count out the top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs for the number one team, for one of the top players in the country. You can't count out the number one team in the country. Then you go to Jordan Seaton. Well, he's taken his official visits. It looks like it's going to be over. All of a sudden, he's going to his first love, if you will, which was Ohio State. They were the early favorite in this recruitment. He made a big deal out of it, blew that announcement up that he's going to Ohio State. And, I think realistically, at the end of the day, that is kind of what sent that recruitment into the roller coaster ride. Yeah, it had been hard to gauge, but you were able to talk to people and get a feel at the time for Jordan Seaton. I talked to AP about this on Wednesday night. We talked to multiple people. Even when you felt like it was Tennessee, I'd be saying this today if he had chosen Tennessee. You still got double-digit days till signing day. This one's still, I would say it's pretty safe to say that he's going to Colorado. Already within 2 hours of him committing, there's been a rumor that he's going to Oregon. So, that quick. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, Josh Heupel still has an in-home visit with him that he can use. Tennessee was planning to use that leading in. That didn't happen when his camp went to California. There's some other schools that have in-home visits. These schools are going to work to get in front of Jordan Seaton. They expected this decision to be made on signing day anyways. So to me, is it probably over? Yes, I think Jordan is pretty confident in his decision, feels pretty good about it. These schools are going to continue to try to get in front of him. So it still expect a little bit of drama out of this recruitment, in my opinion.
It's never over until National Signing Day, and that's been the case for as long as we can remember. Things have changed, but still, it's never over. Commitments are fine, but they're truly nothing until you sign that paper.
Yeah.
Do want to ask you about how this could affect the class. Now, unrelated, Braylon Staley had an in-home visit with South Carolina. That made its rounds on social media earlier this week. But also, Boo Carter and Jordan Seaton were close. And Boo Carter was the biggest recruiter outside of, Glenn Ellerbe and Josh Heupel to get Jordan Seaton here to Knoxville. Does that affect, Tennessee's prize 4-star in-state prospect?
In my opinion, it doesn't. I get the concern. I think this gives Colorado the chance to get Boo's ear back. But things really died down there earlier in the fall. It felt like at some point, Deion was going to be in Bradley County to see Boo. That never came about. Now, obviously, he can get him, to campus. Or he can get in front of him again at some point. There's still time to do both of those things if he chooses to. But until one of those happens, I don't expect – I'm not really too concerned about Boo Carter right now. I think for Boo Carter, he's got a lot going on and start getting ready for the All-American Bowl at the end of the month. He's set to sign early and enroll early at Tennessee and be on campus for bowl practices in roughly a week. So I think right now everything is okay with Boo Carter. But in today's day and age, Eric, you continue to say it, and it just feels weird. You never say never.
Yeah, you never say never. And I thought that, again, I was covering more recruiting before you came on board. But still, I thought that when they came and they were taking part in bowl practices, that pretty much meant, all right, they're not going to play in any All-Star game. But I guess did Cam Selden come last year and practice some and then leave and go play?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if he can play in it actually. I'd have to
Like
check.
Arian Carter's a good example. Like Arian Carter was going to play somewhere, but he came and he practiced, and so he didn't play.
Yeah, I think he just went, right?
Okay.
I think maybe he just went to the Bowls or to
Yeah.
the All-American game
I
side.
would too if I were
I
them.
kind
Yeah.
of think that's how it's going to work. That's kind of what I've got from a couple of guys this year, like Mike Matthews. I spent time with him earlier in the week. He's supposed to be in town for bowl practice on the 16th, and he's also a captain at the well, no, I guess they can play because Nico played in the Polynesian Bowl last year.
Oh, that's right. Nico did play in the
Nico
Polynesian
played in the
Bowl.
Polynesian Bowl last year. Mike Matthews will do Under Armour. He's a captain there, and then he's going to the Polynesian Bowl. So those guys can play. I think it's just a little bit more sparingly.
A lot of this is so silly. It's just nitpicking. But I will say the stupidest thing in the world. We were talking before we went on air about how coaches kind of spend their time. When you have early signees who have literally signed, and then you have coaches going to watch them play basketball. I think that is just the biggest waste of time. Anyway.
Yeah.
Look at this offensive line class now. You don't get Jordan Seaton, which again you wanted. I mean, it is what it is. You can make up an excuse. Oh, I don't want him. Devo, whatever, money grab, whatever. You take him. Good player, right?
Yeah.
You don't get him, but you still have a lot of names in this class. Bennett Warren, a 4-star, really nice offensive tackle. You like that. You got William Satterwhite, Max Anderson, Gage Ginther, Jesse Perry, Jeremiah's Hurd. We'll see exactly what the plan is for them. I'm excited to see him the most. But what do you make of this offensive line class now that, at least, for now, Jordan Seaton is committed to Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's a pretty good class on paper, right? There's a lot of versatility there. I think you have a potential future center in William Satterwhite. You have two guys that, I think in Gage Ginther and Max Anderson that can play multiple positions. I think Jesse Perry, he's more of your developmental guy, but I think there's a lot of high upside there. He's got so much room to add good weight to his frame. He's already carrying what he has really well. So I think he's a guy that when you look at him, I think he's a guy Tennessee's very excited about. They camped him again in the summer after he committed. He came, he worked out at center for a couple of reps, not many, worked out at guard, worked out at multiple places. So they really got a good feel for him in that setting. And then Jeremiah's Hurd, again, he's got all the measurables. He's got the elite measurables, right? And then Bennett Warren, I think from a guy that can get to a really good weight standpoint and develop, I think he's got all of those same characteristics. He's long. He's got the frame that you desire. He moves very well laterally. So I think he's a guy that at the end of the day, Tennessee's still got plenty of reason to be excited about. For him and Hurd, they both are set right now to get to campus in July or in the summer. So I think that, that slows some things down, and Tennessee needed an impact guy that would be an early enrollee like Jordan Seaton, in my opinion. That's why it makes it so big to get John Campbell back. And then now Tennessee has to, I think we'll see. I don't know how much is out there, but I think Tennessee has to continue to kick the tires on every guy in the portal that they feel like can help them at offensive tackle, because you don't have a lot, behind those guys that are there now. You lost Jeremiah Crawford, John Campbell's back, Dane Davis expected to be back. But you've got Shem Umarov, you've got Brian Grant. You haven't seen those guys. So Tennessee's not very experienced there, and you need to be able to keep Nico upright.
Yeah, redshirt junior Gerald Mincy, also a name. Could leave, could come back. It feels like he's likely going to be back, but again, we'll have to see. Out the door here, Matt, I do want to ask you. Signing day is a couple weeks away. You kind of put all your eggs in the Jordan Seaton basket for now, but Roger Saliapunga, highly coveted tight end from Utah, went away from Tennessee, picked Oregon last week. Roger picks Colorado, Jordan Seaton picks Colorado this week. The best available that you were working have now decided to go to other schools. Kind of where are you at on the high school board right now? Who are some names that Tennessee can make a strong push for before signing day?
Yeah, I mean, the high school board is really slim right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're bringing Jaron Sensabaugh in this weekend on an official visit, cornerback out of Innsworth. I do think Tennessee likes the upside there. He just took an official visit to UCLA. He was at NC State before that. I believe he still has one more official visit scheduled for later in the month. Seems like maybe Missouri. I'd have to check and see if that one's still on. His visits did kind of get pushed around a little bit. But we'll see what goes on there. To have him this weekend, I think, Tennessee can make a strong push there. He's been pretty open since the first time that I talked to him, and, right before he decommitted from Vanderbilt, that he feels very good about Tennessee. He likes the home state appeal. But, outside of him, we'll see who Tennessee looks to circle back to in this class. Obviously, you mentioned Braylon Staley. His dad insists there's really nothing going on there with South Carolina right now.
But it's just the look, right?
It was just a courtesy visit. Braylon at least, told me that they're pushing him hard and he does want to listen a little bit and just, hear them out. We'll see. Tennessee will go in home with him this weekend. He's expecting multiple Tennessee coaches there this weekend. He leaves for the Shrine Bowl in the middle of the week. So I think that one comes to a close, regardless of what he's going to do. He doesn't feel like he wants that hanging over his head, so we'll see. But Tennessee has to work some of their own guys here to the finish line. And we'll see if they circle back and try to get anybody back to campus. But right now, I think it's, more transfer portal focus, and you'll see Holden Staes here this weekend, and then we'll see who they bring in the weekend before signing day as more guys continue to go into the transfer portal. I don't even know the count anymore. At one point, it was like 1,500 kids were in there. So you can imagine what it's like trying to comb through all of those guys, or a majority of those guys, right?
Yeah, Bauer Sharp's one of those names that we could see next weekend. And maybe depending on what happens with Holden Staes, maybe we don't see him, but that's another name that you mentioned that is a new one here for Tennessee late in the week. So, Matt, appreciate it as always, man, and we'll stay dialed into all of your coverage over at VolQuest.com.
Thanks, man.
Tennessee Vols on the All-SEC team. That is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. But I do want to give a shout-out to our friends, eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof rack, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need with the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Great stuff there from Matt Ray, as always. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening to a little recruiting talk with my colleague Matt Ray over at VolQuest.com. Here to end our week, let's look over which Tennessee Volunteers made appearances on the All-SEC team. So, last year was such a magical year, and there were so many representatives from Tennessee on the All-SEC team. Of course, Jalen Hyatt, Darnell Wright, Hendon Hooker, Byron Young. There was quite the showing. I mean, Hendon Hooker was SEC Player of the Year in the SEC at the quarterback position. This year with the offense taking a step back, it's easy to see why there wasn't that many representatives. There's one obvious choice on defense, and they got some love, and I'll get to him in a moment. But Tennessee really only 4 players total received some love and some praise for being on the All-SEC teams. And I'll tell you who those are right now. Number one, from both the AP and the coaches poll, or from the AP and the coaches, the league's coaches, James Pierce was named to the first team. So James Pierce, a first-team All-SEC selection by both the AP and the coaches. Jalen Wright, running back, was a second-team recipient from the Associated Press, and Cooper Mays was also a second-team recipient from the Associated Press at the center position. Jackson Ross was named All-SEC punter for the freshman team, so he was an All-SEC freshman team selection at the punter position. And gosh, you guys remember, I know it's a punter, let's not humble brag here, but you guys remember the beginning of the season when everybody hated Jackson Ross because he had a bad opening game against Virginia, and Josh Heupel sat up there in the post-game press conference and said, hey, he's going to be just fine. He's going to be just fine. Looky there, an All-SEC freshman. Are there anybody else that just kind of jumps out at you that they forgot about? I mean, let's go kind of by position group. Wide receivers, I mean, Squirrel White had himself a little bit of a year, but I don't think it's All-SEC worthy. Brew McCoy got hurt. Dante Thornton was a bust this year. Ramel Keaton didn't do much. And, you had 2 redshirt freshmen at wide receiver. They didn't do much. So at wide receiver, no. The tight end position for Tennessee, again, like we spoke on yesterday's program, very productive in terms of run blocking. Tennessee ran for over 2,400 yards this year, 12th best in the nation, 2nd best in the SEC. They combined for 8 receiving touchdowns, but those were 2 players. So, not them. On the offensive line, well, Tennessee ran for over 2,400 yards, so there better be a couple of representatives on the offensive line. You get one in Cooper May's second team. Okay, well, he missed the first 4 games. I mean, there's got to be somebody else, right? Well, no, there's not. Javonte Spraggins, I thought, was a big snub in terms of being an all-SEC volunteer. I thought Javonte Spraggins deserved to be on there somewhere. Second team. Again, you block for the 12th best in the nation, 2nd best in the Southeastern Conference, and you only have rushing attack, and you only have 1 offensive lineman named All-SEC. That doesn't really sit well with me. I think that's kind of a missed opportunity. So I think Javonte Spraggins should have been on here somewhere. Cooper Mays was, and that's good. John Campbell, Gerald Mincey, Jeremiah Crawford, Dane Davis, they all split time at tackle this year because of injuries. Ollie Lane played left guard and center, but he's not going to be an all-SEC guy. I mean, the only other one to look towards would be Javonte Spraggins. He's a name as well. I mean, he started for years. So I think that's where you look and say, okay, well, that's a snub. Quarterback position, Joe Milton was not an all-SEC quarterback this year. Running back, Jalen Wright. He made the second team, according to the AP. Not the coaches, but according to the AP. And I think it's just because of the volume. And maybe not the high-level volume is why he was so good this year. Again, guys, he led all FBS running backs with a minimum of 100 rushing attempts and yards per carry at 7.4 this year. The only other Division I player that averaged more than him was Jaden Daniels on the ground, and he's probably going to win the Heisman, and he's a quarterback, okay? Only 136 carries on the year, and he got over 1,000 yards. So I'm glad that he got rewarded for that, but maybe if he had 200 attempts on the year, maybe he's at 1,500 yards. That looks a whole lot better. Maybe he's at 1,600 yards, and maybe he's a first-team selection. I don't know. But I'm glad that Jalen Wright got I'm glad Jalen Wright got nominated. I'm glad Jalen Wright got on one of these teams. So on offense, that's really all I kind of say. Defense, on the defensive line, James Pierce, second in the SEC in sacks with 8.5. Okay, he is a first team from the AP and the coaches. That makes sense. Tyler Barron had 6 sacks. That ain't nothing. You mean to tell me you can't find somewhere to put Tyler Barron? And they put multiple defensive linemen on there. It's not just like 4 and 4. You mean to tell me you can't find somewhere for Tyler Barron to be on here, an all-SEC guy? He had 6 sacks. Omar Norman Lott for the interior had 5.5 sacks from defensive tackle. You mean to tell me you can't find a spot for one of those 2 guys? I mean, maybe getting both of those is asking a lot, but one of those guys, probably Omar Norman Lott, has the better chance to be a representative for Tennessee because he plays defensive tackle and he had 5.5 sacks. Javonte Spraggins is probably the biggest snub for me. Omar Norman Lott would probably be the second biggest snub for me. And he only did that in 10 games too, which is really, really impressive. So again, James Pierce got his accolades. Norman Lott, Tyler Barron did not. Linebacker, Tennessee shouldn't have had anybody. And then in the defensive secondary, Tennessee really shouldn't have had anybody. But I'll tell you, Kamal Hadden, if he would have kept playing, he would have been there for sure because as we spoke on yesterday's show, he was playing at an elite level. Real quick, let's look at the Associated Press all SEC teams. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll share the screen right quick with you. You see right here, wide receiver Malik Neighbors, not going to argue with that one. Luther Burden, not going to argue with that one. Look at the offensive line, your tackles. I mean, let's look at these guards. Tate Ratledge, good player from Georgia, actually got hurt in the Tennessee game. Tyler Booker. I mean, those are some good guards. Let's wait till we get down to the second team. And of course, Cedric Van Pran's got the most name recognition in terms of center in the Southeastern Conference. Who's that guy? Brock Bowers. He's a pretty good player. Jaden Daniels, no surprise. I mean, I'm not gonna, Jalen Wright was phenomenal, but can you make the case for Jalen Wright over Cody Schrader this year? Probably not. Can you make the case for Jalen Wright over Ray Davis? Probably not. Ray Davis also is a touchdown scoring machine. Just is what it is. I mean, the all-purpose guy, Anaya Smith from A&M, that's probably a good pick. Let's go back. Let's look at the second team offense real quick while we're talking offense. Xavier Leggetti. Leggett and Brian Thompson, okay, or Thomas. And that's fine. We don't have any receivers that we can, make a case for. Tackles, don't care. Let's get these guards. Joshua Braun from Arkansas, Cameron Johnson from Missouri. You mean to tell me Javonte Spraggins can't be in there? And I know you want to reward Missouri because Missouri had a good year. I get it. I mean, Arkansas did not. Why is Javonte Spraggins not right here? I don't know. Jalen Milroe, second-team quarterback. Quinjon Judkins, who's in the transfer portal. Jalen Wright. Of course, they're your running backs on the second team. Okay, yada, yada. Let's look at the first-team defense. James Pierce, respect. Darius Robinson from Missouri. Okay, your two defensive tackles are Marcus Harris and Deion Walker. Both have really good numbers. I'll say that. Okay, that's fine. Linebackers don't really care because Tennessee doesn't have a dog in the fight, nor to the secondary. Let's look at the second-team defense. Second-team defense. Prince, I'm not going to try to say his name, from Florida. He's in the transfer portal, staying in college, but in the transfer portal. He's at the one of the end spots. Landon Jackson from Arkansas is at the other end spot. You mean to tell me Tyler Barron can't be in there at that second end spot? Defensive tackle Justin, the guy from Alabama, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, and Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia, who is a good player. Omar Norman Law should probably be in there somewhere. So, fact of the matter is what it is, not the end of the world. Tennessee's not too worried about that, but I thought for sure that Tennessee had a couple of snubs, and Tennessee should have had at least one more representative, maybe two, when you talk about those three players of Javonte Spraggins, of Tyler Barron, and of Omar Norman Lott. All right. Of course, Jackson Ross, as I mentioned earlier, all-SEC freshman punter, so congratulations to him. We got a whole lot to cover on Monday's show. What did these transfer portal targets say about their visits to Tennessee? What are some new names that are going to be popping up in the transfer portal? There'll be a couple. It moves by the minute. And how realistic are those options? All that and more. It's coming up on a Monday Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys, as always, for being here. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. If you're watching and you're not subscribed on YouTube, what are you waiting for? We're almost at 10,000 subs. So let's go ahead and do our part and try to get this show to the 10K. All right, guys, we will talk again on Monday. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks so much for listening to Locked On Vols.